Namaskaram.
Namo Namah Guruji.
Namo Namah. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Padyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Asmadgurubhyo Namaha. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Bhadarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vatyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Shri Medha Dakshinamurti Swamine Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Namaste once again to all of you.
Namaste Guruji.
Namaskaram Guruji.
Namaskaram. See, in the last class, during this question answer session, there was a discussion on how these desires come and how we can manage these desires in our life, which is a very important aspect of the spiritual journey now, right? Because all our scriptures talk a lot about managing the desires or curbing the desires, right? So there was a request made by some students that I should deal with this topic in a little more detail. I had given some very simple answers in the last class, so there was a request for a little more detailed exposition of this topic. So I plan to spend some time today on that. And if we get time, we will go to the topic of Atma. Otherwise, we will go take up the topic of Atma, Tattva Bodha's topic in the next class. Okay. Because this is an important topic and I really appreciate the interest of the students in knowing this. So we need to understand, the role of desires in our life, how desires are born, what are the consequences of those desires, and how to deal with them in the light of what our scriptural teachings are there. This is what I plan to deal with today, right? And at the outset, let me highlight that this topic will be interesting or relevant for only those who want to seriously pursue the spiritual goal, who want to go towards moksha, seriously go, right? The goal should be very clearly set and one should be prepared and committed to do all that is required to achieve that goal of moksha or liberation. That is a must, because nothing in our life can be achieved unless we set a goal. And in pursuit of that goal, we are prepared to sacrifice a lot of things, whatever is required. And this we have seen in so many people who are really successful in their respective fields, whether it is sports or science or anything. They have a goal. I want to reach that goal, and they are prepared to not compromise on any of the things that are required to be done for reaching that goal. Okay. For other people, general people, such topics may not make much sense. Okay. So with this disclaimer, let us enter into the topic. And there is one more important point which I want to emphasize. See, all of us, we find ourselves in a certain situation today. Because whatever may be our age, it is not like Adi Shankaracharya, when he was 5 years old, he had a desire to take sannyasa. We are not like that. We have actually entered Grihastha most of us, almost all of us rather. Maybe few are still in the Brahmacharya ashrama. and then they will be entering the Grihastha. So we find ourselves in a situation where we are surrounded by family, friends, relatives, all those people are there. And we have certain responsibilities and duties towards all of them. That particular aspect we must not, forget. Choosing a spiritual path as a goal of life does not mean that we shy away from all those responsibilities. That's very, very important. Those responsibilities which already we have, that should be our first priority. Whether it is responsibility towards our parents who are staying with us, old parents, some of us may be having old parents with us. We have a responsibility towards them, a duty towards them. Similarly, children are there. We have a responsibility towards the children. We have a responsibility towards our spouses. We have a responsibility towards our relatives, friends. All those responsibilities are very important. Spiritual path does not mean an escape route from all these responsibilities. That point must be very, very clear in our mind. Okay. But of course, it is a challenge. It's a very fine balance one needs to strike between discharging the responsibilities and our spiritual seeking. There is a balance we have to in the initial stages. As we grow in the spiritual path, one thing is these responsibilities also will reduce, or some of them will fall away, and some of them automatically, we will come out of it due to our intellectual maturity, which will take place during the course of this journey. In fact, looking at it positively, these responsibilities and duties, they actually provide a great opportunity to discharge all of them with a sense of, with an attitude of karma yoga. I told you, karma yoga attitude, Ishwara Arpana Bhava and Ishwara Prasada Buddhi. So whatever we are doing for anybody as a duty or a responsibility, if we consider it as we are doing it for Ishwara, and then without expecting anything in return, or whatever comes in return, we accept that also as prasada from Ishwara. If with that attitude we discharge all our karmas, all our responsibilities, then that is a very great thing that we can do in the spiritual path, because such a approach will give us chitta shuddhi, purification of the mind, and which is very, very important for this spiritual growth. Okay. So with this, introduction, let us enter into the topic of desire. See, desires are natural. In fact, they are instinctive. A human being's goal in life is to be happy. In fact, always happy, right? And desires play a very, very significant role in achieving this to a large extent. We experience a joy when our desires are fulfilled. Fulfilled desires gives us a pleasure, even though we can say it's only temporary happiness. For some time we get the pleasure, but still we are happy for that some period of time. And if we are able to have, lot of desires and continuously fulfill all those desires, that happiness will be extended for a longer period. So desire per se is not a problem. This we must understand very, very clearly. And this is the role of desires in our life. Desires give us happiness, and that is our ultimate goal in life. What is moksha is all about? To be eternally happy. That is the moksha goal. All other things, self-knowledge and all, are only means for that happiness, that ultimate end, right? But the problem arises when these desires become obsessions, addictions, binding desires. Such desires stem from a sense of attachment. Attachment either with objects or people or even situations. And here also, even though there are obsessions, if they are fulfilled, there is no problem. You will be happy. But when such desires are not fulfilled, it leads to anxiety, many undesirable consequences, or unhealthy consequences rather, and even to the destruction of one's personality. These addictions, obsessions, desires, and we have seen that happening in so many cases. That attachment gives rise to these desires, and also the consequences of desires is very beautifully expounded by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter. He says to Arjuna, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsah Sangasteshu Pajayate Sanghat Sanjayate Kamah Kamat Krodho Vijayate Krodhat Bhavati Sammohah Sammohat Smriti Vibhramah Smriti Bhramshat Buddhi Nashah Buddhi Nashat Pranashyati. Complete this desire anatomy he analyzes. What is this desire? How it arises? What are the consequences of that? In these 2 slokas in the 2nd chapter, he tells Arjuna, this is what happens when these obsessive desires come into your mind. Attachment driven desires. Okay. See, he says, for a person who is constantly thinking of sense objects, and here sense objects, we can also include relationships and, all sorts of addictive relationships. When a person is constantly thinking, his mind is constantly engaged in this process, what happens? A fondness for them arises. He becomes very fond of them by thinking it again and again and again. And from that fondness, desire is born. Suppose you actually are, fond of some particular object. Let us say, what should I say? If I give any example, a pen. Okay, a very neutral example. You are fond of during my younger days, we were fond of a Schiffer's pen. I mean, pen, this very rare, this ink pen used to be very exotic thing. Children will not be given that. They'll be given either a pencil or, this ballpoint that had started coming in the market. So they will be given. This ink pen will be a very exotic thing. Suppose, you see somebody using a pen, and what is the best, and one of the best brands, the Schiffer's. I think it is an English brand, very beautiful pen. So everybody will have, or the people who are interested, they will have a fondness for Schiffer's pen. And the more you go on Schiffer's pen, a desire to acquire that pen comes. This is how the desire is born, right? So what Krishna is saying is, when that desire remains unfulfilled, it converts itself into an anger. That is what he says. So what he is saying? He says, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsah. Dhyayato means who was constantly thinking of it, practically meditating on that. Vishayan means sense objects. Sangasteshu Pajayate. Why does that happen? Sangaha. All those desires are happening because of attachment. Sangaha. Teshu, these desires, upajayate, they are born out of this attachment. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. And because of that, what is born? Desires are born. Kamaha sanjayate. Then, when this kamas, these desires are unfilled, krodho abhijayate, anger comes. Disappointment leads to anger. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. When a person becomes angry, he becomes totally deluded. Delusion happens naturally, because In anger, what happens? That's what he's going to say. Sammohat bhavati smriti vibhramaha. When a person is angry, his access to his knowledge, which is there in his intellect, is lost. Anger is like a virus attacking the knowledge which is stored in the intellect. If the anger does not allow us to use the knowledge which we have to handle the situation. And that is why when we are angry, we say, lot of things we say. Later on, we may regret. But at that point in time, whatever, maturity, whatever knowledge we had to manage a particular situation, when we become angry, all that knowledge becomes inaccessible. So that is why he says, Kamat krodho abhijayate, krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Smriti vibhrama means loss of memory. Loss of memory means lack of access to whatever our memory is, whatever is there. We may have, in normal circumstances, if somebody presents us with a situation, we will know, oh, this situation has to be handled in this particular manner. But when we are angry, that ideas and all will not occur to us at all. Impulsively, we will react, not intellectually. Okay. And from loss of memory, what happens? We lose our discriminative powers. Because memory is all about what? About discrimination, right and wrong. This is what I should do, this is what I should not do. That is all discriminative powers. What we call as viveka when we study Tattva Bodha, right? Discrimination. So in spiritual path, that discrimination, viveka, is the very first step. What is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is not good, what is right for me in the spiritual path, what is not right for me in the spiritual path. All these things we must have a very clear discriminative understanding and store that in our chittam. If we don't have that, then there won't be a path, there will be a spiritual jungle. We will be going here, there, so many things will be wandering around, roaming around. And because of lack of discrimination, Krishna says the person perishes. Perishes here does not literally mean that he finishes off. It means that his psychological personality perishes. That's what it means. He will have no peace of mind. He will suffer a lot of misery, and he will lead a very unhappy life. You can take it like that. So this is what Bhagavan Krishna is saying. But of course, he is painting a very gloomy picture, isn't it? Started with desire, and he says that if you are not going to, what is the result of this desire? He says all this happens. Of course, we must always remember he is talking about unfulfilled desires and desires which are obsessive desires, binding desires. He is talking about that. So we must understand the context in which Krishna is talking. And of course, from a point, he is advising Arjuna. Through Arjuna, he is advising also all the spiritual seekers, right? So the point we have to understand is the importance of managing, or let's say reducing the desires, or putting it positively, managing the desires is very, very important in this spiritual path. This is the message we have to take from this. And Krishna says in the same chapter, a person who gives up all his desires, as and when they appear in the mind, he says, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And who is happy with oneself, happy in oneself, with oneself, and oneself alone. Atmani eva atmana tushtaha. He is very happy with himself. He is not looking forward for any desire fulfillment to be happy. Such a person, he says, is a person who has actually realized the spiritual goal. He calls him as Stita Prajnaha. That is the definition Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita. Stita Prajnaha is one who is happy with himself. He does not need any object, any relationship, anything else to be happy. This is the difference between a jnani and a samsari. Samsari will always look outside for objects and people and events to be happy. They will look for going to world tour and all. Why? Because that will give them happiness, they feel. This fellow goes on a tour in his mind, pilgrimage, the tour through all scriptural teachings. What great rishis have said in the Upanishad, that is the tour that he undertakes. One after another, all scriptures, he studies that. And he is very happy with that. That is the ultimate realization of the spiritual goal. And that person is called Stita Prajna, or some places called Sthira Prajna also. Okay. Of course, that is the ultimate goal. We are just taking some baby steps. We are just embarking on that spiritual path. So, what is important for us now is how do we deal with these unhealthy, obsessive desires, which are a big obstacle in the spiritual path. So that is what is very more important for us, right? The first thing we have to understand is that all desires, they spur some action in us. Isn't it? If we have a desire and we want the desire to be fulfilled, sitting in one place is not going to fulfill those desires. We will start acting upon all those things which are required to be done for the fulfillment of the desires. This is the first thing. That is the more and stronger the desires, the more and stronger will be the actions required to fulfill those desires. And those actions could take a lot of time and also effort on our part. That means what? We have got that much less time for the spiritual pursuit. So once we have these obsessive desires and we start pursuing them, we have already started compromising on our spiritual goal. That is why I said a person who first step is set the goal. Without the goal, you will just be wandering, meandering through all these lectures, these talks and all that. Okay, fine, one fine day, without gaining anything, we will leave this world also. So the goal fixation is very important, like in any other field. In spiritual field also, one should very clearly fix the goal. This is what I want and I am going to travel in that path. So as I was saying, this time available for the spiritual journey will be that much compromised by our pursuit of all these desires. So there is also a risk that in the pursuit of that, the focus can be gone, totally taken away from the spiritual path. That is finished. I mean, that is what he says, pranashyati, vinashyati. So the personality, the spiritual personality can be destroyed by, unending pursuit of these desires. As I said, it is not wrong. You can pursue it, but don't opt for the spiritual path. Don't have one leg in one boat and another leg in another boat, and eventually both the boats will be going in different directions. You can understand what will happen to your condition. That is what all the scriptures keep warning as far as desires are concerned. Okay. So reducing the desires and reducing the time and effort that we spend to on them will free up a lot of time for us to undertake a systematic and continuous study of the scriptures and the teachings, which is necessary for the spiritual journey. So first we have to understand this logic, that why desires are not to be pursued, even though they give us temporary happiness. When we are looking for a bigger goal of eternal happiness, permanent happiness, we have to sacrifice this temporary happiness for some time. And the second step is to turn our focus to outgrow the obsessive desires for sense objects and all these sense pursuits which we have, and substitute them for a desire for a higher purpose. This is another way we can do it. In fact, there's not another way. These are all these things we should do. It's not alternatives. These are all steps how to go about it. And in fact, we do this throughout our life. As a child, we are obsessed with our toys, isn't it? Even when we are not even a toddler, we are lying in the cot, the child's cot, and facing only the ceiling. And then somebody brings one rattle and shows us, we become happy, right? So that then when we become toddlers or something, some other toys people bring or our parents give us and all, and we become obsessed with those toys. If somebody else comes, we will not give them those toys. They're mine, right? But after some time, what happens when we grow up to be a boy or a girl? Will we still go back and play with those toys? We outgrow them, outgrow the desires for those toys, and then we enter into desires for different types of games and sports and all, which we play with our friends. Like I remember I used to play this marble and this top and all that with rope and all that at one stage in life. Then what happens when we become teenagers? We go to college and all that. What happens? As a college student, when we still be playing marbles, we outgrow those desires. We have different desires. We have desires, I don't want to elaborate. What all desires college students will have, all of you will know because you have gone through them. So what I want to point out is this outgrowing these desires and substituting for desires for a higher purpose. We do it constantly through our life. It's the same process we have to continue. That's all. When we have desires for all the sense objects and all the sense pursuits, we just have to outgrow them and then convert that into substitute them with a desire for a higher purpose. What could be the higher purpose? One higher purpose is that let me serve the humanity. Let me spend the time which I am spending today in fulfilling my desires in actually helping people with their lives, people who are lost, people who need my help, whether they are orphans, whether they are senior citizens, old age home people, or whether anybody. There are so many people do that. And when you get into those pursuits, mind you, your focus is only on that, fulfilling that goal in life. Everything, your own personal desires, your own personal comforts and all, people forget. There are stray dogs. People collect those dogs and take care of them. Higher purpose. They are also, living beings. They also need to be cared about. You can think of 100 such, pursuits where you can substitute your desire for these objects, sense objects and sense pursuit with a desire for a higher object. Spiritual pursuit itself is a desire for a higher object. You will not enter into a spiritual pursuit without a desire for that. So what we have to do is practically learn to substitute this with a desire for some higher purpose, some higher goal. And if we are able to do that, we will be progressing in the path of maturity, becoming more and more mature psychologically. Okay. So still, of course, all these things I talked about are in the realm of materialistic desires only, but still we can, in materialistic desire also, there is a gradation. From a purely personal desire, you make it impersonal desire. That's all. So this is possible and people do it also. It's not something very difficult for us. And it is not that we have any hatred or dvesha for the previous desires we had. They were relevant at certain particular stage in our life. We have enjoyed it, done with it. Now we are outgrown this. Now we are moving forward in our life. Well, life also, like spiritual journey, is a journey. And in life journey, one has to keep on moving from one level to another. And that is why in our Shastras, they kept these 4 stages, We discussed that, Varnashrama Vyavastha. All our problems today, especially when we become senior citizens, is we are stuck in Grihasthashrama. And Grihasthashrama, we are unable to get rid of that. And because of that, as we grow old and old, more and more problems, both psychological and physiological problems, everything starts coming. That's why Shastra said, when you have reached that stage where your children have grown up and you have discharged your responsibilities towards your children, go to Vanaprastha-ashrama, withdraw. Withdraw from an active life. Spend time, devote your time towards upasana, towards meditation, towards puja, all those kind of things. And of course, after that, at that stage also, your spouse's responsibility remains with you. Eventually, you take sannyasa. You take sannyasa, spouse takes sannyasa, both are become sannyasis. As sannyasis, they are no longer related to each other, no responsibility towards each other. They are responsible for their own self. This is the path. And we have totally lost in that. So that is why all our problems in current day are there. Okay. So when we understand with Viveka that all these sense objects can give us only limited happiness, and they also run the risk of turning into a misery, or unhappy state of affairs, that will help us to outgrow those desires. So what is required? Viveka is required, discrimination is required. We have to pick up every desire for sense objects and analyze them. Is this going to give me permanent happiness which I am seeking in my life? If the answer is no, I don't want that desire to be fulfilled. Let the desire come, I will not act on it. That's all. Like that, you go on doing. And replace that with the desire for materialistic happiness, for self-knowledge, which will give us long-lasting happiness. And this particular aspect is dealt with very beautifully in Mundaka Upanishad. It says, Pariksha lokan karmachitan brahmanaha nirvedamayat nastya kritah kritena tadvijnanartam sa gurumeva bhigachet samitpanihi srotriyam brahmanishtam. The essence of this mantra is Pariksha lokan, analyzing all the experiences in our life. Karma chitan, all this which leads to karmas, all experiences related to karmas in our life. A brahmana, a person with a discriminative understanding, who knows between nitya and anitya, what is temporary, what is permanent. Who has, we have seen this Nitya and Anitya Viveka, right? Such a person, what he does, he gains dispassion and understanding that all these material pursuits in life are finite, and I cannot expect an infinite happiness, a limitless happiness from a limited thing. This we must understand. All these things which are limited in our life, they can give us only limited happiness. If we want unlimited happiness, we have to go in pursuit of that unlimited, limitless Brahman. Knowledge of that Brahman. We have to pursue that. Because there is no end to these wants. And a person, as Pujya Swamiji says, a person can never be happy being a wanting person. As long as wants are there, you will remain unhappy. Because some wants will be fulfilled, some will be unfulfilled. So you always will remain unhappy. Now, to be free from wants, one has to be the whole. If you want to free yourself from limitation, you have to be limitless. Purna. If you are already limited, if limitation is a fact, you can never convert that into limitlessness. Therefore, the logic is, unless you are already limitless, but because of your ignorance, because of some misconception, you are taking yourself to be limited. What is required? That ignorance of your limitedness is to be removed. And how can you remove that? By gaining knowledge. How will you gain the knowledge? Guru me bhavi, Guru meva abhigachet. Go to a guru. Samitpanihi. Samitpanihi basically means with all these sticks which we use for homa and all that. Because those days the gurus, they will, that is the Guru Dakshina they used to give to the Guru. When they go to the Guru, they will go with this, they go to the jungle, collect these sticks and give Guru as a Dakshina for doing the homa and all that. So that Guru will teach us. So this is how, by discriminative understanding, convert the desires into, a spiritual pursuit, or not convert, rather, basically you understand that desires are limited, they give limited happiness. I am in search of unlimited happiness, so this is not going to fulfill my requirement. This is the understanding, right? And this is what the whole Vedanta is all about. Vedanta brings a lot of objectivity in one's life. As we progress, our thinking transforms from subjective thinking to objective thinking. This means what? That we make a conscious shift from being an emotion-driven person, because desires are in the realm of emotions. So we make a constant or conscious conversion or transformation from an emotional-driven person to a person who is intellectual-driven, rational-driven person. A person who is driven by the choices of his mind to a person who is driven by rational thinking. So we have to take the reins of our life from our mind and hand them over to the intellect, the rational faculty. In other words, we have to integrate our mind and intellect. We then become an integrated personality. There's a beautiful portion in Kathopanishad, which is called Ratha Kalpana. Yamadharma Raja is a teacher, and he compares our life to a journey. The human body is compared to a chariot. This human body is a chariot. The 5 sense organs that we have, they are the horses. And the sense objects are the roads in which these horses run. The sense objects run on the sense organs run on the road of sense objects. The mind is the reins with which these horses are controlled. No? The reins are there. No? And those reins are in the hands of the intellect, which is the driver of the chariot. And the Jivatma, that is our being, the sentient being, is the Ratha Swami, the lord of the chariot, the master of the chariot. And this famous section, as I told you, is called Ratha Kalpana in Kathopanishad, chariot imagery. This is what Yamadharma Raja explains. So, what this mantra says that one who is without discrimination and whose mind is always uncontrolled, his senses are unmanageable, like these vicious horses. They will be running in different directions if they are not properly controlled. The reins are there for that only. He will not be able to drive his chariot to the goal of moksha or liberation. But he will continue to be in samsara, or he will fall again. Even if he starts the spiritual journey, he will fall back into samsara. Whereas he who is full of discrimination and whose mind is always controlled by whom? By his intellect. His senses are manageable. We manage all sense organs through the mind in the hands of intellect. Like a good horses, then the horses will all run in the same direction, properly coordinated way. He will be able to drive his chariot to the goal of, for which he, whatever his goal. And this goal, according to Yamadharma Raja, is a goal of not to be born again. Punarapi Jananam he will not have. This is the Ratha Kalpana. Now I'll tell you an interesting thing. You all have seen the poster of Bhagavad Gita. Have you seen Bhagavad Gita pictures?
Yes, Guruji. Yes, Raghuji. Yes,
Guruji.
What is that picture says? Can you describe the picture?
The one I have says, Yada Yada Dharmasya. That's what
No, I'm talking about the poster. Bhagavad Gita, if you just go and type in Google, you get an image. What is the image you get?
This body chariot analogy, that picture.
Cool. There is a chariot. Arjuna is there. Krishna is there as a chariot.
Driving the chariot, 4 horses there. Yes.
Horses are there. Then the reins are there in the hands of Krishna. The entire Bhagavad Gita is the message of that picture, that imagery is the full message of Bhagavad Gita, the complete message of the spiritual path. It's such a beautiful, some artists must have conceived this from Ratha Kalpana only. That picture, according to me, has come from Ratha Kalpana, from Kathopanishad, because Bhagavad Gita contains lot of slokas which are based upon Mundaka Upanishad, Katha Upanishad and all. If you read the Upanishads, read Bhagavad Gita, you will know which are straight away taken away from these Upanishads in Bhagavad Gita. Of course, both have been, choreographed by Veda Vyasa only, so the author is the same, right? Upanishads he has actually written down for the sake of our this thing. He did not compose them. But using the Upanishad, he has composed Bhagavad Gita as a part of Mahabharata. So that's why I say all our scriptures contain ultimately the knowledge which is there in the Vedas. They are presented in different ways. So this Ratha Kalpana is very beautifully presented in Bhagavad Gita. All Bhagavad Gita is about that only. Handing over these sense organs to the mind and handing over the reins, which are the mind, to the intellect. And who is the intellect? Bhagavan Krishna. So another very important lesson. Intellect is the seat of Parameshwara. That is where the Parameshwara, Paramatma resides or is available for recognition in your body-mind complex. Hand over to that Parameshwara, that intellect. Then all these desires and obsessive desires and all will be automatically taken care of. That is the teaching of the scriptures, rather. That is what the scriptures say. So what it means, we have to convert our personality from a predominantly emotion-driven personality to a predominantly intellect-driven personality. This does not mean that we should be totally bereft of emotions. What I am talking about is predominance. We should retain emotions. They are very important because love, compassion, and all are emotional things. Very, very important in our life's journey. Instead of having love and compassion for few people, we should expand that horizon, have love and compassion for everything in this entire universe, for everybody who needs that love and compassion. That is what our approach is, should be our approach. So it is not that we should be bereft of any emotions. All these emotions are important, but in our spiritual journey, we don't get, what carried away by the emotions. Whenever these emotions come, we apply our intellect and then do the action what the intellect dictates, not what the mind dictates. Of course, that question will not arise if we have integrated the mind and the intellect, if you have become a integrated personality. And that is why I said in the last class, one of the ways, convert special relationships into general relationships. It's all part of this. How to go about and doing it. Okay. From emotional driven relationships to intellect driven relationships. So that is what is we have to focus. But then there was a genuine question from one of the students in the last class. They said, what about, we may be able to do that, what about other people? No, they may not understand our motives, that our spiritual path, and hence they may feel let down, they may feel cheated, etc. Okay, this fellow has, sort of abandoned me, kind of thing. How do we respond to that? See, we are not talking about giving up relationships at all. In this spiritual journey, one thing we must admit is some disappointments on the part of others around us cannot be avoided. There will be there. Even Adi Shankaracharya had to disappoint his mother and take sannyasa. He had to actually do a drama. That's what the story says. That a crocodile caught hold of his leg and then he told his mother, unless you say yes to my sannyasa, this crocodile is going to devour me. So the mother was forced to say yes. Whatever it is, it may be a story, we don't know how far it is true and all that, is now come in the system rather. But the point is, some disappointments on the part of others cannot be avoided rather. And that is why, when what the scriptures advise is, when you come to spiritual path, formally renounce the world, become a sannyasi and then take up this. But then that is not practical for all of us, isn't it? But we need not formally renounce the world. We have to change our approach also according to the times. We can develop the attitude of renunciation within ourselves. And I have experienced when you progress in this spiritual path, it actually happens automatically. You don't need to put in any effort for it. This renunciation, this desires going away, converting special relations into general relationships. Somehow, as more and more Chitta Shuddhi keeps coming in your mind becomes more and more pure. You are able to see everything much more objectively with lot more clarity in your thinking. This is what is renunciation is about. Objective living, totally objective living. And in that you have these emotions. It is not bereft of emotions, as I told you. you develop a love and compassion for everything instead of just few people around you. Okay. Because the biggest baggage that we carry in the spiritual path is this emotional baggage, and which is a very big hurdle in this path. To that extent, we must prepare ourselves that I am going to cross this hurdle. So we have to gradually, we should not shed it in one shot, like run away from home, and shed it gradually over a period of time. As even we are, progressing in this path, we are, making ourselves more and more fit to undertake the spiritual journey. Slowly, we actually shed that baggage and convert all those special relationships into general relationships. And as I said, in general relationships, we will continue to have love and compassion for everyone. What will be missing is this mamakara. Mine, this feeling will be missing in that. We will start understanding Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. My Kutumba, my family is not just these few people around me. This entire world is my family. And because the entire world is family, these people whom I'm talking about are also included in that. So by that token, they become my family also. And when I am praying, when I am doing anything, any action that I am doing for the welfare of the world, they will also receive that benefit of all my actions which I am doing. Because these two things, this ahankara and mamakara, are real big hurdles in spiritual path. And that is why there is always an emphasis on neutralizing the ego. Ahankara means ego. Mamakara is mindness. If I can use that, I don't know whether there is such an expression in English. Mindness. Mind. Mera. That one needs to get rid of that. And what Krishna says, Sarvatma Bhava, we have to start developing. It will develop over a period of time. Samatvam says, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, Krishna says, right? That is what is the ultimate goal, Samatvam. Having the same kind of relationship with everybody and everyone in this world, including whom we were considering as our family. Right? So in practical terms, what we can say is one should first learn to divert one's thoughts from desire for sense objects to desire for some higher purpose. That's first thing. And I gave you, serving the community or all those things. But that should be done with a nishkama attitude. That is important. You are not expecting anything back from them. You are doing it as a service, right? And when this happens, the mind gets occupied with that desire, which is a noble desire, and moves away from the desire for sense objects. In fact, in the 6th chapter of Gita, Bhagavan Krishna prescribes some important sadhana in the spiritual journey for a sadhaka. And how he should approach, what should be his attitude towards them. I'll conclude this topic by quoting 2 slokas from that, from the 6th chapter. There are slokas 5 and 6, right? It says, Uddharet Atmana Atmanam Na Atmanam Avasadhayet Atmaiva Hyatmano Bandhuhu Atmaiva Ripuratmanah Bandhuratmat Manastasya Enamaivatmana Jitah Anatmanastu Shatrutve Vartetatmaiva Shatruvat. This is the 2 mantras. And Swami Chinmayananda is a great orator and a very great teacher. I have listened to his explanation of this mantra. So I will just share with you what he says. He explains these slokas very, very nicely. He says, Uddharet Atmana Atmanam. Uddharet means lift. Atmana, yourself. Atmanam, by yourself. Lift yourself by yourself. Because nobody is going to help you in the spiritual path. Even a guru cannot help. Guru can show you the way, but he cannot help. He cannot take you down the spiritual path. Swami Chinmayananda says some gurus promise all this. He calls them mule gurus or transport gurus. They say, I will transport you to heaven or whatever place. A real spiritual guru will show you the path, give you the road back. Traveling you have to do yourself. Atmanam avasadhaye. After you have started traveling in this, after you have lifted yourself to a certain level, higher values of your life, after lifted yourself to some level of spiritual growth, na avasadaye, don't fall back again. Don't drop down to the old level. Preciously maintain the improvement that you are gaining. Atmaiva hyatmana bandhuhu. In this great pilgrimage, this spiritual journey itself is a great pilgrimage. It's a pilgrimage to the innermost recesses of your own personality, the Atma, which is residing in the innermost personality. In the spiritual path, you yourself are your bandhuhu, your relation, your kith and kin, your well-wisher, your friend. All of them is only yourself. And Atmaiva Ripuratmanaha, and you yourself is your own enemy also in this spiritual path. That is what Bhagavan Krishna is telling Arjuna, right? So you yourself are your greatest friend who can help you en route. And if there are any obstacles arising, the enemies that will pull you down on this path, you yourself are the enemy from that perspective. Yenatmaiva atmana jitaha. When you have conquered yourself by yourself, what will happen? Bandhu atmana atmanas tasya. You are your great friend. So an individual who has got an integrated personality, that means the mind and the intellect are integrated, who has conquered the mind by his intellect, his mind becomes his greatest friend. Then the mind will not go here and there. It will help him in this pursuit. The desires will be generated in the mind, will all be relating to this pursuit only. But if the mind and intellect are not integrated, the mind will create obstacles in the spiritual path because of the previous vasanas. The vasanas which we may be carrying from the previous janma or even in this janma. And these vasanas, they manifest in the form of desires or anger. And when you are thus prompted by desires all the time, that mind becomes an enemy number one for your intellectual and spiritual growth. Intellectually, you want to lead a spiritual path, but you will not be allowed to take one step in that path because your mind is not integrated. And therefore, your mind creates all disturbances for yourself. And Swami Chinmayananda says that this journey through the spiritual path is a pilgrimage of the alone to the alone, all alone. It is a subjective unfoldment. So as I told you in the last class also, as an answer to this is an individual goal, individual journey. Other people may have a lot of problems with this, and they do have problems. But what is important is that, as I said in the beginning, we must not use the spiritual path as an excuse to escape from our responsibilities towards others. The responsibilities which we have already taken up needs to be dealt with and discharged, and we have to get freed from those responsibilities if we need to concentrate on this spiritual path and focus. That is important. So this is what I wanted to share with you all today. Thankfully, I finished in time. I'll say the prayers, and then if there are any questions, we will deal with it. Okay, and next class we will go to Atma. Yes. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you all very much.
Raghuji, I have a question,
Thank
Raghuji.
you so much.
You were telling that desires have to be converted into the spiritual growth or something like that, if I understand correct. So does that mean, is that what you're saying? Desire has to be converted into preferences. So it becomes, you know what I'm saying? It need be fulfilled, it need not be fulfilled. Then you can focus on the spiritual growth. Is that what you mean by that?
No. I didn't say all that. I didn't use the word preferences at all in my talk.
No, I am using the word. No,
yeah. So what I told you, yeah, I will clarify. See, first you understand desires are natural. Correct?
Yes.
They give us happiness. Correct?
Yes.
So they are a part of our life at this point in time. But what is the problem is these obsessive desires, and especially desires which relate to sense objects. And by sense objects, I mean, objects, people, and also the situations, all three. How to get rid of them is that you substitute those desires for sense objects with desires for something higher.
Oh, I see.
Like what I said, when you had a very obsessive desire for your toys as a toddler, you substituted them with a desire for playing this marbles, or the girls used to play this some game and all that, right? What is that game? I don't remember. All of you ladies must have played when you were in your adolescent age, isn't it?
Yes.
You have all played some game. It is called, my daughter also I've seen playing this like this, and girls will play. Boys will play with this marble and top and all that. Right. So your desire you converted. At that time, if you are given this toy car or something, you will throw it away. Right? You will not sit and play with the toy cars. What you are all rattler and very good, nice rattle, you will never do that. Right? Why? You have outgrown the desire for that. In the previous stage, it was a desire, obsessive desire. Now you have outgrown. Similarly, when you come to college, will you still be playing all these games and all? You will not be. You will not be playing marbles. So what I said was, at every stage, we have experienced replacement of a current desire with a desire for a higher purpose, which we considered as a higher purpose at that particular point in time. And we gave up the previous desires. We substituted them, right? Desires as such remained. So what I'm saying is, in the spiritual path, in order to get rid of these desires for this sense object, unfortunately, after we started getting these desires for sense objects, sense, people, also in one way they're sense objects only rather, because they are fulfilling a certain psychological requirement in our life. We think it is all love and all that. There is nothing love. Love, people don't understand the meaning of love, and then they say this is all love. So whether it's people or objects, all I'm saying is, now when you want to enter the spiritual path, substitute those desires as a desire for a higher thing. And what could be higher thing? Higher thing could be what is, serving the people, serving the community, or doing some, even you get attached to a temple and you just devote your time whole day to doing everything that is required to be done in the temple as a assisting the temple authorities. There are many people who do it. They don't. This desire for sense objects automatically fall away, because desires fueled. The fuel for desires is desires only. The more you feed these desires, the more with the fuel of desire, the more they will keep on growing. As after some time, they will fall away when you don't feed them. That is how you have to manage these desires for sensual pleasures or sensual, the sense objects and all. That's what I said. Is that clear?
Thank you,
now?
Raghu. Yes, very, very clear. Very clear. Thank you.
Any other
Thank you,
question?
Guruji. Thank you.
Lataji, you asked one question last time about prarabdha, this karmas, right? What was that? Papas. See, I searched and all that I could get was the strongest of papas called prabala prarabdha. The medium level is called madhyama prarabdha. And the weak one is called durlabha prarabdha. This is the maximum I could get. No, these are all explained Sanskrit terms only. Prabala, madhyama, durlabha, or strong, medium, weak. Sanskrit equivalent for that. But I could not get any other definition of these three kind of, papas.
Thank you very much, Guruji.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Right. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
It was a wonderful session, Guruji. Very nice.
I hope you liked today's talk. It was not to do with Tattva. It's all to do with spiritual talk only. But then since this question was there and this will be there in everybody's mind, I thought let us deal with it now so that this does not bother you when we go forward. Okay. So
And
we'll
thank
see you.
Rekha ji for asking the questions and for the lovely explanation.
Thank you very much. Well, the person who asked the question is there or not asked there? Sulekha ji is not there today.
Yes, I'm here, Guruji.
Oh, you are
I'm
there.
here.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you. Very
Thank you,
much.
Guruji.
Okay.
Very,
Hari Om,
very
Hari Om.
nice.
Thank you very
Hari Om.
much.
Thank you.
Hari Om.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. See you all next Saturday. Sorry.
Yes, Guruji.
Hari Om.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you.